settings helps a bit with at least seeing the reflections projected by these light sources. And while we are on this page, we can also enable the bloom effect to see a little bit of glow around the bright sources, just for the sake of the extra eye candy, I guess, but also to gauge how bright are the actual sources. So these are our practicals that will create the points of extra interest once all the other lights are set up. Next, I'm going to activate the collection containing the light sources representing the actual light emitted by these practicals. These are the smaller area lights placed nearby the emissive materials and kind of motivated by them. The point of these lights is to extend the concept of the practicals to give them the actual illumination. It may seem like these lights are pretty hard and pretty bright, but once we add the rest of the setup, their light will get dissolved and will serve as a seasoning. The important thing about the Eevee's lights that we cannot control in cycles is the custom distance. It means that we can actually control the fall-off or the distribution of any light source. If we wanted, for example, we could keep these lights away from touching the floor. But I didn't go as far, I just added a little bit of the light fall-off. And activated the contact shadows, obviously. The goal of the contact shadows is to capture the shadow detail that the shadow maps just fail to capture. So it is pretty much a no-brainer. We need the contact shadows to be activated for all light sources at all times. Like, look at these details here. They should definitely be in shadow. Now they are. All thanks to the contact shadows. Alright, gonna switch off this light layer and move on to the second one, representing the light coming in from the lamps located within the capsule. I will hide this door by pressing H for a moment, so we can better see the area light here. Nothing fancy, just an elongated rectangle of the area light, a fairly powerful light source at 200 watts. The custom distance is set to approximately 3 meters now. Basically, I didn't want this light to spill onto the floor, how it should probably gone if it was, let's say, the physically correct ray tracing engine. In the physically plausible light transport, the light shouldn't fade over distance like that. But in Eevee, we can use it to our advantage. So here it just touches the lower part of the capsule and that's it. So this is how the practicals plus 2 light layers supplementing the light from these practicals look together. Again, the contact shadows are on. Just something to remember. Again, it may look deceptively bright at that point and deceptively harsh in terms of lighting qualities, but that's not something to worry about. In just a moment we will blast it with the soft environment light coming in from the HDRI panorama, and it will fade away, it will blend in really nicely, and it will work as the tiny points of interest scattered around, and just some extra exposure. The important thing to understand about the high key lighting is the key fill ratio, or in other words, the contrast ratio. So let me dim down the practicals for a second to show what I mean. Pretty much every lighting setup has some kind of a key light, the light that creates most of the illumination and provides some general direction. And then there is some kind of a fill light, usually on the opposite side of the scene, to fill in the shadows generated by the dominant or the key light. And in your average scene, more often than not, the key light is much stronger than your fill light. 5 times, 10 times, or let's say 7 times stronger. This is called the key fill ratio or the contrast ratio. And for the lower key lighting styles, it usually is pretty drastic. But when it comes to the high key lighting setups, the whole point is to crank up the fill so much to lower the overall contrast and to drop down this key fill ratio to something like 2:1. That doesn't mean that there is no directionality. The key light is still stronger than the fill, but the entire image is now way lighter and brighter, and we work from that base. What is the perfect way of boosting the fill light if not HDRI environment? Starting with an HDRI panorama is a no-brainer. For the HDRI panoramas, I usually go straight to Polyhaven, aka the best place ever to find the public domain HDRI panoramas. So I was looking for some HDRI environment that had lots of bigger, softer, brighter surfaces within it, preferably with some windows, and that Brown Photo Studio HDRI just ticked all the boxes, I think. I used the 4K EXR version of this file, and after downloading it, I imported it straight to Krita, the free and open source image editing software. Essentially, I was going to blur this high dynamic range image a little bit to create a silky smooth, almost out of focus light field that would offer a smooth ambient lighting in Blender. So I went for the Gaussian blur and cranked it up considerably to something, I believe it was something like 110 pixels. At the same time, it offers a free out of focus effect, so what is not to like? Finally, it needed to be exported out of Krita as an EXR file, that is important. And once the HDRI was blurred, exported back and ready to go, it was time to load this HDRI into Blender as a crucial high key lighting element, pushing enormous amount of soft light from all directions into our cryopod or any kind of product really. To load the Studio HDRI, we need the shader editor opened. There we have the good old background light that can be used for the same purpose, but it is just a flat fill, and as such it is quite unimpressive, although the idea is the same, to fill the whole 3D scene with light, with exposure. I'll press Ctrl T to add the environment